No wife of mine will ever wear pants. This is an older story, but one of my favorites. When girls started wearing slacks, my great-grandmother told her husband, my great-grandfather, that she wanted to get some slacks. He blew up insisting that no wife of his will ever wear pants. She could have argued, but she accepted his edict quietly. Until they went bowling. She found the shortest skirt she could find. After all, he insisted she keep wearing skirts and dresses. This was in the 50s. That night, he agreed to let her get slacks.
Side note: she would also sew shut the flaps on his long underwear when she was mad at him. My grandmother had a friend of her husband decide that he could just drop off a stack of jeans to be mended. No asking, just plonking them down on the table and saying sew up all of the holes. So she did. Sewed all of the pockets shut, leg holes shut. Then she decided that the waist didn't count as a hole, so she sewed the zippers down, open, and of course sewed or patched all of the damaged places. Reportedly, after he fell over trying to put a pair on, he ripped the stitches out of the hem, and put them on, only to discover that he couldn't zip them, and he couldn't get to the stitches on the zipper pull with the pants on because she'd very carefully tucked it inside the fly.
I read a similar story of a Hollywood celebrity, about that same era. I think it was a little later, when women wearing pants had become more common though still unusual. Anyway, this celebrity went to some fancy restaurant in a long shirt and pants, and they refused to seat her because she was wearing pants. I'm pretty sure they would have required a suit and tie for men. So she took off her pants and went in wearing just her long shirt that was barely long enough to be considered even a micro mini skirt. And speaking of how times have changed, remember that I Love Lucy episodes where she gets the vase or trophy or something stuck on her head? She and Ethel have to travel somewhere to get it taken off, and Ethel insists on going to change because, I'm not going to go on the subway in blue jeans.
Completely horrified at the idea. While Lucy has her head completely inside a vase, LOL. Reminds me of one of my favorite stories my grandma tells about my insane alcoholic grandfather. It was check day and he had explicit instructions to come directly home from work on payday because otherwise he'd spend the whole thing at the bar. He hadn't come home and she heard from one of his workmates he was at the strip club. She knew she wouldn't be able to get him to leave by asking, so she devised a plan. She went in, got right on stage and took her shirt off. He grabbed her and ran out the door so fucking fast, and that was the last time he snuck out to the strip club.
The flaps part did me in. Your gran was badass.
My mother used to tell the story about her and her best friend being thrown out of teachers' college for wearing trousers. The obvious conclusion being that they were clearly lesbians. The outrage. It was years before she mentioned that they did indeed, at one time, have it going on. Not that it was a good reason, of course. Even in the 40s or 50s. My grandmother is a redhead and her father forbade her from wearing anything red. He didn't think redheads should wear red. So when she's in high school, her mother sends off for a 3-pack of dresses. No choice in colors, prints. They finally arrive and one of the dresses is red. She put that dress on and strutted around the house and great-grandpa got really mad. But there was nothing he could do about it. He had paid for the dresses. I think she wore that dress until it fell apart. I heard this as a joke, but it seems there might be some basis in fact. On their wedding night, Grandpa took off his trousers and gave them to Grandma and said, "Put these on." Grandma replied, "They won't fit me." Grandpa told her, "Exactly. Remember who wears the pants in this house." Grandma wriggled under her wedding dress and brought out her drawers. Threw them at Grandpa and said, "Put these on." Grandpa said, "I can't get into these." "Exactly," said Grandma. "And you never will until there is an attitude adjustment." As someone who worked in a bowling alley for a while, I can tell you that skirts, short shorts, rompers, and crop tops are a guaranteed way to flash everyone behind you. I would strongly recommend avoiding wearing these while bowling. Unless you're into that. My wife's grandpa liked to tell stories from his younger days. On more than one occasion, he'd retell a story he'd already told me. I didn't mind because liked listening to him. I could always tell when Grandma was upset with him because as soon as he started one I'd already heard she'd jump in. Now Jay, you've already told him that. I loved Grandma as well, but I'd have to tell Grandpa that I didn't remember if he'd told me or not. So he'd tell it anyhow and Grandma just side-eyed him the whole time.
Sounds like Granny knew how to skirt the issue.
My grandma had a good friend whose husband never allowed her to drive. This didn't bother her until he lost his eyesight and then both of them couldn't drive. So I taught her. I was 22. Haha, it was so much fun. There I was teaching a 70-year-old. Once many years ago I was minding my own business in a store. A young woman told her boyfriend that she would never ever wear men's cut trousers. Zipper in front, while side-eyeing me and speaking at a "this is for you" naughty female decibel level. And all I could think was, you poor ignorant little redneck. Programmed from birth and all self-righteous about it. And if this is to prove your femininity and rectitude to that chinless twit you're with, it ain't working, honey. Ex-husband's great-grandpa came home drunk and beat the hell out of the wife. He passes out. She tied him up in the bed sheets and beat the ever-living F out of him with a wooden rolling pin. Never touched her again. Payback is a B with an itch. What's the difference between pants, trousers, and slacks? English is not my first language and I never heard this word. Not a MC. But I worked for a certain Big Five accounting company in the 90s that did not survive a specific Ron scandal. Some of the lawyers in our office started to wear slacks than dress skirts to work. The old rank and file partners in the office had kittens. They knew they could not do a thing, but the drama was epic. Surprisingly, I had the reverse. Grandfather liked to wear robes, kimono, bathrobes, night robes, not even dresses, just robes. Even though he was not very fortunate in life, it made him feel like he had power and like he was a rich person inside his small home. This irked my grandmother, who did not know men could also wear robes except priests and the likes. Saw that as effeminate and did not like seeing her husband behave like a insert slur about men displaying behavior of the fairer sex. In response, my grandfather said, "Good thing we are getting divorced." Then, and, in a power move that was confirmed by children involved, flipped Grandma off, took the edges of his leopard-patterned robe and ran off flapping the damn things like he was some kind of majestic flying leopard Birdman error of nature. This story is being told every time a child asks why we never see my father's mother at any party. I'm also thinking of using that next time I break up with someone. I just never had a robe at the right time. Don't misunderstand. There was plenty of other reasons for the breakups. But that's none of our collective business, I was told. Whenever anybody talks about returning to the good old days, I usually suggest it's time to go. Tell your wife she can't wear pants anymore, and then, don't worry. A black eye usually only lasts a couple days. My mother had been a tomboy when she was young and refused to wear skirts or dresses. Her school had a dress code that did not allow girls to wear pants. So my mother would get sent home from school. My grandparents would check to make sure she was dressed properly before sending her out the door to school. But my mom would stash a change of clothes in some bushes and change on the way, and then get sent back home again. I think that she was violating the dress code every day, but only getting sent home occasionally. So this went on for a long time. I am not really sure how it all ended. I sometimes watch old TV shows on YT, and one I do a lot is the black and white What's My Line? 1951 to 1967. I believe. At the time, after a female contestant signed in, John Daly would ask her, "Is Mrs. or Miss 4X?" and as an unfamiliar person was addressed by surname. Occasionally an early pantsuit would be worn, and I remember Bennett Cerf joking that they were pajamas. No woman was ever in public in pants. I laughed out loud at the sewing shut the underwear.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.